Hello guys, how are you today? This would be the last section from Unit 3 and it is about the market structure. So whenever you hear the term market structure, what do you think we will be talking about? Okay, it means that we're talking about how the market is done. Okay, so, and when I'm talking about market, we took that previously in Unit 2. It means I'm talking about a place where people meet to buy and sell goods and services. Remember? So, what's happening here? Exchange. Now, when I'm talking about a market structure, it means when they're exchanging, is it a competitive market or is it a monopoly? Okay, and competitive market, perfect competition, it is at one side, and on the other extreme, you would find pure monopoly. So they are the complete opposite of each other. Okay, this section is in your book on page 246. And now we will discuss the objectives. So these are the learning objectives for the lesson. The first one is defining a market structure. And then this is the first one, then we need to know why markets have different market structures. So why some markets are a monopoly, why the other ones are pure competition, why other ones are oligopoly, and so on. So this would be the second objective. The third one for this lesson would be, so if we have a high number of firms, how would this affect the price and the quality and the choice and the profit? Okay, then in order to differentiate between perfect competition and the monopoly, we need to describe their characteristics. Then we have described the pricing and output policies in perfect competition and in a monopoly. So since we already know from the previous objective the characteristics of a perfect competition and a monopoly, in that objective we would be discussing the pricing. So what makes the price of that product 20 dirhams, what makes it 5? Also, how much should they produce of that product that we're talking about? And then we have to distinguish between price competition and non-price competition. So when companies compete, I'll talk about it briefly now. When companies compete, they can choose to compete either by a decreasing price, and they will attract more consumers to buy their product. This would be considered price competition. So it's anything related to the changes in a price that they will be doing. Or I would have something, companies can compete by doing something called non-price competition, and we will be talking about it in more details later on. Finally, what we would be doing is distinguishing between a pure monopoly, mono, which is one, and we will talk about it, and oligopoly. What is the difference between them? Okay? Okay, so before we start with the lesson and with the definitions and the details of that chapter, I would like you to think, please, about having a competitive market and a monopoly. Try to define them in your own words on your copybook, please. And also, I would like you to think of what will the benefits be to the consumers when we have large number of firms. How is this helping us as consumers? And on the other hand, if we have a monopoly and we have one firm controlling the market, how do you think this would affect us as consumers? Okay, please think about whether I'm talking about competition, which is the second point, or a monopoly, which is the third point. I would like you to think about the advantages and disadvantages of both market structures. Once you're done with that, and you have time for it, and you think that you're really confident with what I asked you to do, I would like you, please, to give examples from your own country of situations where there is a lot of competition. Okay, and give me another example regarding a monopoly situation in another area from your country. And if you want, you can name the company and tell us what product it will be producing. Okay? And you can research and compare the two situations. And let's say you don't know, just research about your country and tell us about these two market structures in your country and how is it affecting consumers, producers, and the government as well. Okay. Finally, I would like you to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of a monopoly, making use of real examples from your own country and from the UAE. Now, let's say you already are from the UAE. Think about another country. I would like you to think about more countries to broaden your knowledge about it, the market structure in other countries, and to compare. Okay? And now these are some of the key terms that we will be talking about in this lesson. We will be talking about market structure, advertising, product differentiation, customer brand loyalty. So think about what do we mean by saying customer brand loyalty? Think about it. It's, for example, when I am very loyal to the product that I'm using, I as a consumer. So even if the price increases a little bit, I will keep on buying that particular product. So let's say, to me as a consumer, I like the L'Oreal shampoo, let's say. So no matter what happens to its price, I will continue buying that product because this is considered customer brand loyalty. I, as a consumer, I am loyal to that brand. The predatory or destruction pricing, we will be talking about it later on when I'm talking about competition and how do companies compete against each other, and price war, price leadership, price takers versus price maker. Who was considered a price taker? Is it in competition or in a monopoly? And who was a price maker in a competition or a monopoly? Who makes excess or abnormal profits? What is an oligopoly and price collusion? These two are related to each other. What do we mean when I say barriers or obstacles to entry? It means I need a patent. And what are the consumer protection laws and what are contestable markets? Okay, so these are the terms that we will be studying throughout the chapter. Okay, so here we will be talking about the most common market structures. They are four. You will be responsible for what is a perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and a monopoly. And as you can see, to one side, and this we explained it at the beginning of the slideshow presentation, we have the most competitive, and on the extreme other side we have the least competitive. Okay, so here we have who is the most competitive. It is a perfect competition. We will be discussing it and we will be talking about examples, about profits, about advertising strategies, and so on. On the other hand, which means I'm talking about the least competitive market structure, it would be a monopoly. Who comes in between them? It's monopolistic competition and oligopoly. Okay, so these are, let me highlight it for you in another color, a blue. So these are the four market structure. The perfect competition, it is the most competitive, and on the other side I have the least competitive, which is a monopoly. Now, what is a market structure? This is found on your book page 246. So we just really started with the lesson. Before, it was an introduction to what we are going to talk about or study. A market structure, it's characteristics of a market that influence the behavior of buyers and sellers, and what are the market outcomes that we have at the end. And this could be achieved from terms of product quality, quantity, and price. So as we said before, as we took in unit 2 previously, it means I'm talking about the buyers and sellers. The characteristics of a market, what do they include? They include four things. How many firms do we have in order to compete and supply us with the product? Supply us with the product that they want to sell. The second one would be the degree of competition between them. Is it a perfect competition or there is no competition at all, which we call a pure monopoly? The extent of their product differentiation, this is the third point. The ability of firms acting together in order to determine the market price. Okay, so what makes them sell it for 20 dirhams, 10 dirhams, or 5 dirhams? The last one is the ease which new firms can enter the market to compete with them. So, do we have barriers of entry? Who do you think puts the barriers of entry? Is it a competitive market or a monopoly? The market structure that puts barriers to entry, yani they don't like new firms entering the market, it would be a monopoly. I would like to be the only person or the only firm supplying my consumers with that product because I would know that I would be making a lot of profits. Okay, I wouldn't want anyone to enter and to force me to decrease my prices. So guys, I will create barriers to entry, which we will talk about at the end of this chapter. Or sometimes, do you know what happens? I don't need to create any barriers to entry. They are already there. We call them natural barriers to entry. Okay, now let's look at the market structure that we have. We have a perfect competition, and on the other side, as we said, we would have a pure monopoly. So here, in a perfect competition, it means we have so many firms, and these firms, what are they doing? They are supplying us with identical products. They are producing similar products, okay? Here, individual firms have no control over market price. It means I would be calling them something called price takers, and this is a term that you saw in the key terms. Price takers, it means if I am competing with other firms, and let's say we are all selling agricultural products, okay? I'm a farmer and we're selling tomatoes, let's say. If the 1 kilogram of tomatoes is, let's say, 10 dirhams, I cannot be the only one, and I'm competing with thousands of other farmers selling my tomatoes for 30 dirhams. No one would buy it from me. So that's why I take the price as it is in the market. Whereas on the other hand, when I want to talk about a pure monopoly, it means I have a single large supplier in the market. So only one firm that is producing that particular product. They have no competition at all. So the monopoly here, you guys can determine the market price. This is why we would call it a price maker. They set the price that they want. Okay? So this is why in a pure monopoly, they would be making something called excess or abnormal profits. Because I don't have any other choice. Even if I don't like their product, I am forced to buy it. Usually, I'll just give you a quick introduction about it. Usually, when I'm talking about a pure monopoly, it means I am talking about companies or organizations that are owned by the government, which means the water and electricity companies, they are owned by the government. It's a public sector. Usually, they're not owned by private individuals. Okay, so this is a summary if you want. We will be talking about the market structure, the four market structures that we discussed. We will be talking about perfect competition, what's in between them, between a monopoly and a perfect competition. Okay, we will be talking about the number of firms. In a perfect competition, we have infinite number of firms. It means we have so many firms. Monopolistic competition, it's less competitive. So obviously, I would have many or several amount of firms. Oligopoly, only it means a few. So I have a few companies, usually up to 15 companies. It could be 20, it could be 10. We will talk about examples about it. We will give examples about it, I'm sorry. And a monopoly, it means we have one supplier of that particular product. Now, barriers to entry. Is it easy for me, if I want to open a firm, to enter the market and start my own firm and start selling? Now, for example, in a perfect competition, I would have no barriers of entry. It means it is very easy for me to start my own firm and exit the market whenever I want. In a monopolistic competition, we have few barriers to entry. In oligopoly, it's not a few, it's a lot of barriers of entry. So they put many restrictions, many rules and regulations when you want to enter the market and start your own company. And when I'm talking about a monopoly, they block it completely. This is where they will put either the artificial or the natural barriers. Okay? The type of the product, we will be talking about it in more details later on. It's homogeneous in a perfect competition. In a monopolistic competition, يعني they're all the same, okay? They don't need to brand it. They do not need to advertise it at all. Whereas in a monopolistic competition, since it's not 100% competition, their product would be a bit differentiated, a bit different than each other. So they brand their product somehow. In oligopoly, the same thing. In a monopoly, it is a unique product since I am the only one supplying the people with that product. Okay? What are some examples about a perfect competition? Oil and food stuff. Monopolistic competition, it's small restaurants, shops, hotels. Oligopoly, financial services, supermarkets. Monopoly, as we said before, usually it is owned by the government. So it is the government services, the phone, water, electricity, gas, petrol in the country. Okay? So why do you think the government will take control over it? Because usually the definition of a government, it is taking care of their people. So at that point, the government will not want to raise the price so high, since this is a monopoly, and make abnormal profits from the people. Whereas if I am the producer of that product, if I am the only one that supplies the country with electricity, my major aim would be to maximize my profits, especially since I am a private company. So I would be selling the kilowatts of electricity at a very, 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 very high price. I would be making a lot of profits, and I am the only one supplying you with electricity. So whether you like my company or not, you have to take electricity from me. Okay, so this is why we call them a price makers. Okay, and on the other hand, when I'm talking about perfect competition, we would be calling them price takers. Now, why do firms compete? What do you think firms compete with each other? First of all, remember, at the end of the day, private companies, no matter what, and this rule we've been taking it from the beginning of last year when we started the econ introduction. Firms compete, logically, they want to maximize their profits. But before I reach that point where we want to have increase in profits, I have to pass through several steps mainly. First of all, firms compete to increase customer base. They want to have more customers. The more customers that we have, the more selling we will be doing. We will expand our market. So companies compete to expand their market share. Okay, they will be one of the top 5 in that particular industry. So I'm well known. They want to achieve product superiority. My product is better than the other product, and to make my to enhancing my brand image and the image of my product. This is the brand image. Okay, like sometimes I will give you a real life example. We always say, excuse me, do you have a Kleenex? It's not a Kleenex. Kleenex is a brand, but because it's one of the best brands regarding tissues, people got used to it by calling it a Kleenex. It should be tissue paper. So mainly we are using the brand. Okay. Another example would be when I'm talking about diapers, automatically we would say Pampers. Pampers is a brand such as Huggies, newborn, so on, so many different products. But Pampers, because it's one of the best, Pampers as a company has created a brand or product superiority, and they enhanced their brand image as well. Finally, when we achieve all of these, automatically we will have an increase in profits. Okay? And when we are competing, the good thing about it, because I want to maximize my profits, we will be using our resources in the most efficient way. Why? Because I want to minimize my losses or my costs, and I want to maximize my profits. So right now we will be talking about the different types of competition. They are how can firm compete in two different ways. It's either they will use a strategy called price competition. It means any competition that they would do, it would be related to price. Usually when you want more people to buy from you, what will you do? You will be decreasing your prices. So here firms are competing with each other by decreasing the prices of their goods. Now, remember an elastic demand, it means no matter how much the price rises, people will still consume the product, for example, if it is a need. So here they're telling you, however, if the demand of the product is inelastic, if we decrease the price of that product, then it means the revenue will fall. Okay, so then we have non-price competition. It's the other way of how firms can compete with each other. What they will be doing here, they will compete with each other, fight with each other as rivals, but they do not touch the price of the product. So they would compete using other strategies. The other strategies is, for example, they would be using something called new product development. They would do something additional to the product that they are selling, or customer care. So for instance, they will add this, if something happens to the product, you can return it and you will get a voucher, or you will get a new product instead, or so this is after sales care. Or they could start advertising their product, they are branding their product, or they put their product in certain stores so people would be capable of seeing it and they would want to buy it. So all of these things, companies are competing with each other, but they are not touching the price of the product. They are keeping it the same. Now,